Peter, I guess the next topic has to do with the obvious, the elephant in the room. We got a new administration uh, supposedly coming on board, even though we don't have a president that's willing to give his tender his resignation or whatever he needs to do. But he's not conceding. But ultimately, we're going to have a new president and a new administration. This president and this administration has pretty much, as you predicted in many of your books, walked away and backed away from the global stage as being the world's guardian and the world's checkbook and welfare donor, if you will. Where do we go over the next 4 years? How does it affect our geopolitical standing? What's that mean in terms of trade? And what's that mean in terms of our supply chain in the United States? How does this affect us in general?
Well, let's get the caveat out of the way. Biden's never been in charge of anything, and his political views have evolved dramatically every 5 to 10 years based on the political wins within the Democratic Party. So there's absolutely no track record that we can measure this against. But if you go by what he said during the campaign, we should expect a far more isolationist America than what we've seen under Donald Trump. Biden has said he would accelerate troop pullouts. He'd put all the money at home to help with local events and development. He's not going to even begin negotiation of any new free trade deals. And if there's any product that the government has a choice of purchasing where there's an American product and a foreign product, he will always buy the American product. Now, this is all in flagrant violation of the WTO Accords, which he has indicated he has no intention of amending or abiding by. So the big thing that Trump set us upon is that when he had an ideological idea like tariffs on China or less trade or Mexicans are rapists, he would take some top level actions with executive orders and tweets. And then if somebody in the bureaucracy would come up and contradict him, he'd fire them. So what happened was that the top tier of leadership within the American bureaucracy was gutted, but the bureaucracy down below was kept. But without that interlocuting between the president and the rank and file never knew what to do because it's actually in the law that they have to get orders from their boss, not from Twitter. So Trump removed the top layer that allowed the bureaucracy to function, but did never reform the bureaucracy. So we paid for the bureaucracy without getting the benefits of the bureaucracy. And that's why Trump prefers things like tariffs, because he can do that from the top. There is no management. Biden is a manager, probably. And so we're probably going to be seeing the full weight of the US government bureaucracy being brought to whatever policy it is he used. Now, if you like the policies, that's great. If you hate the policies, that's awful. But as regards foreign trade, that means the Chinese are going to get hit from every single angle imaginable on human rights, on disarmament, on transport, on energy, on the environment, everything. And then it's all going to be bound up into a trade dispute. So expect America's relations with China in general to just get awful, and for that to trickle down through the entire manufacturing process.
It's not awful already?
Also, no, it's not. It's not. We have tariffs of 15 to 25%. Expect those to expand by at least a factor of 4 in the first 8 months of the Biden administration. There is no way he's going to be lighter on China than Trump has been. And expect something not quite so harsh to happen with Europe as well. We've been skirting towards a full-throated trade war with the Europeans for a year and a half. And nothing that this administration says it wants to do suggests that relationships are going to get better. Now, the rhetoric's different. The idea of American leadership and partnership, but partnership with fewer troops overseas and less money and taking all of our marbles economically and bringing them in-house. Yeah, that's not what leadership looks like. That's what isolationism looks like. So it might be Trump with a smile, but it's still Trump and probably wielding a bigger hammer.
Okay. And so what does that mean to trade in the United States? Obviously, you said previously in other speeches that our trading partners, we're going to select who they are, and the winners we've pretty much determined are going to be Canada, Mexico. I believe the trade agreement with South Korea and
Japan's the fourth one.
Japan. That's right. And does that change?
Oh, I would first note that when you get a free trade agreement with the United States, that's not the last step. That's the first step. That means you have the option of continued engagement. The U.S. will still keep demanding things, but those four, at least for the next few years, they're locked in. There's a question whether or not Biden means that the United Kingdom is an exception to the no new deals, because that would be an easy one where we'd get our way. But beyond those five, there's nothing.
Okay. Now let's talk about the next consequence of that is our supply chain, the supply chain of U.S. manufacturers in general. And then there's one other, and that is the supply chain of the U.S. education or college system for the international students.
Universities that are dependent upon foreign students in order to make things work, you really need to diversify away from China, because that pipe is going to go completely dry. It doesn't mean that international students are going to stop coming, but the US government and the Chinese government are going to stop the flow from China to the United States. So you just need to move on. American culture, left, right, and center, has turned sharply anti-Chinese. For manufacturers, that same decision point is coming. We now have unofficial reports that the Chinese mainland authorities are now rounding up people in Hong Kong and busing them to re-education centers, just like they did in Zhejiang. And remember that part of the national security law that was passed in China a few months ago was specifically to target foreigners. So if you are still doing business in China, if you have important personnel there, get them out. Otherwise, you won't. One way or another, the Chinese American trade relationship is going to utterly collapse, and best to be in front of that rather than behind it. The sector that is refusing to read the writing on the wall the most is by far tech. They still have their entire manufacturing supply chain China centric, but a lot of others, bit by bit, have been moving things out for the last year and a half, and that has accelerated under COVID.
Do you have any data or evidence to prove that there is onshoring is truly happening or reshoring?
Data for this year is a little bit difficult because it's recent, but we know in calendar year 2019, before coronavirus, before the trade war got really ugly, we had a 20% reduction in value added components by value from the Chinese system coming to the United States. Now, only about a third of that relocated to North America proper. Most of it went elsewhere in Asia, with Vietnam being the single biggest winner. But we had been moving this way already, and the industries that were able to get ahead of the curve, electronics and automotive are probably the two that resonate the most, are seeing life being a little bit easier. Now, right now, in December 2000, the picture is very muddled because China has basically beaten coronavirus. So has Taiwan, so has South Korea, so has Vietnam, and for the most part, so has Japan. So the Asian manufacturing system is not facing coronavirus hiccups right now. And that is allowing all of those countries to increase their exports to the United States. And so at the end of the year, we're going to have these weird motions throughout all supply chain issues where things started to move because of health. And then when it became clear that the United States couldn't really make this work, things started to go back. What I'm warning you of is that the politics have changed on both sides of the Pacific. And you do not want to be caught between America and China when they really get angry at each other. And that's going to happen next year.
That's a lot to think about.
Well, we're looking at 30 years of manufacturing supply chain disintegration all coming apart. Now, we knew this was going to happen. Whether it's demographics or geopolitics, all the arrows are pointing in the same direction. And I understand why a lot of manufacturers do not want to walk away from their sunk investments. But honestly, they're lost at this point.
Loss being investments in
You will never get
plants.
compensated for them.
Okay.
They will be confiscated, and if you have mission critical staff with the IP, they will not get out.
Okay. So, what's practical advice you would give U.S. manufacturers, both large and small, today?
Well, this is strategic is obvious. Get out of China. The more tactical, if you do not have Mexican friends yet, make some. Uh, it's difficult to know how holistic the American retreat from Asia is going to be, whether it's going to ultimately include Korea, Thailand, South Korea, Japan, Taiwan, Vietnam. We'll probably still have connection to all those places, but they're not going to be as robust as they were. Anything that you can relocate to the NAFTA countries is going to be kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Gold star material from a political point of view. We saw a dramatic change in the rhetoric of the Trump administration in its first 2.5 years, from going to talk about the Mexicans as thieves and rapists to the best friends of the administration, to the point that US regulatory law actually changed in many sectors in manufacturing to classify Mexican manufacturing as sufficiently American to escape tariffs. Now, we don't know under Biden, when he says buy American, whether that means buy North American. We'll find that out very soon. But one way or another, the old chains we've come to rely on, they're going away. And I realize that first mover advantage can be risky, but honestly, the first mover advantage started in 2018. And anyone who has not started mitigation measures already is way behind the ball.
Thank you. Wow, that's a lot to think about. We're going to move on here in a minute. This next piece should be kind of fun, a lightning round that we're going to go through on various industry sectors. But Peter and I want to appeal to you again, the viewers, to please consider making a contribution to Feeding America. And we will be playing a video here at some point, and you'll be able to watch it. Short video. Please take a look and make that donation to Feeding America. Thank you. Thank you, Peter. We'll be right back.
Did you see anyone's brothers? Is this your bird?
We'd do anything for kids. Yet 1 in 6 children in the U.S. struggle with hunger. Help end childhood hunger near you. Learn how at feedingamerica.org.